Ladies and gentlemen, Big Harry News.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hearing News with Martyn Bomber Bradbury. Kia ora,
Kia ora,
sir.
comrade.
Good evening to
Kia ora.
you. How are you? Doing well, man?
Very excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Everyone's missing Chewie. Everyone's
Yeah.
missing Chewie.
Yeah. I wear a Chewie hoodie every now and again. I just cuddle it a little bit just to make me feel. I've been watching he's on Instagram and some other places, and he's been looking at lots of tanks. He's a bit of a
Yes.
World War I buff, and so he's been looking at tanks and watching tanks drive and going to museums with tanks. So we'll find out, I'm sure, maybe next week. He's back next week, but I'm like jet lag, maybe a couple of extra days. So either next week or maybe the Monday after we'll get the lowdown. And that show will be no news events. It'll be it'll be like, remember the old day, the family slide? And that's me getting onto the bus, and that's me getting off the bus, and that's the lunch I had when I got off the bus, and that was me with a pigeon, and that was some more pigeons. We'll do one of those. We'll do like a family photo show with
Awesome.
Chewie. It'll be fun.
Awesome.
I hate doing this because when you know, like in radio, Marty, when you say, oh, such and such is coming up and they inevitably don't, is that kind of thing. When you tease someone coming and they don't end up turning up, it's a
Yeah,
jinx in
we've all
radio.
had that.
Yeah. Well, tonight we've got a news story about this Carl Bates story. It's a really interesting story. TVNZ did an item on it, but TVNZ is yet to upload their One News from tonight. It's funny because 7 Sharp is uploaded, but One News has not. And I'd normally play some video from it. So we'll either hopefully wait to see if One News turns up, or else we'll just talk about it from a written story. Nicola, it's interesting as well, TV1, TV3. TV1 and TV3 talked about this Fonterra payout today, but only TV3 kind of featured any kind of analysis of it. TV1 just did that whole kind of, here's the press release, whereas TV3 delved a bit more into it, got some commentary from the Greens, Nicola Willis saying, we feed the world, and the Greens are kind of going on some level, but is it, are there any doubt, is it any means to an end? Do we think about it? Should we feed the world at all costs? So that's sort of the TV3 news story, which we'll look at tonight. And of course, lots going on around Gaza and what's happening with Gaza, and the amazing John Minto is currently, as we speak, in the waiting room and about to join us. One bit of housekeeping. We are going to be spending some time tomorrow afternoon, my lovely wife and I, making merchandise that's been ordered this week. The merchandise that's been ordered this week is a fundraiser for medical aid for Palestinians, and it's the t-shirts and hoodies that say, you can't bomb the truth away, something that Mehdi Hassan said at a stand-up over the weekend. So we're selling t-shirts and we're selling hoodies that say you can't bomb the truth away. There's no BHN branding on them. We're not doing it necessarily for that. You can buy hoodies, you can buy t-shirts, and because we're going to be making them tomorrow, that means if you order tonight and there is a limited run, there's every chance it'll either be on a courier tomorrow afternoon or at the very least Monday morning. So bhn.nz/shop, go and have a look at the You Can't Bomb the Truth Away merch. We are giving $10 from every hoodie and $5 from every t-shirt to medical aid for Palestinians, or MAPS. And I'd like to have a problem, and that problem is, shit, we've run out of t-shirts. I better order some more, right? So you guys, it's up to you whether that happens, and we'll see how much. We've done maps before once, and we raised them about $800, I think. We'll see what we can do this time around.
Wow.
It's good to try and get the whānau on board and to come along. So people are liking this one, Bomber, that we've just launched this week. You Can't Bomb the Truth Away. And yeah, support us and support MAPS at the same time. Tonight, get to it. Right. Marty, anything before we start? Anything before we get into it?
I think that the GDP collapse last week, those numbers have really shifted the debate. I think that the decisions this government made last year to cut that infrastructure pipeline has had such enormous ramifications, like so many warned at the time, and we're now bearing a terrible harvest. And I really fear this summer it's going to get harder, because Trump's tariffs really didn't impact those GDP numbers. You'll see them coming up in the next ones. And I think so many people have left New Zealand, so many jobs have been lost. There's a structural deficit now in what this government are doing. The 15 billion for tax cuts and landlord loopholes, we couldn't afford it in the first place. Two, we can't continue that. And I think the way the CEO boards have turned on Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis, my guess is that there'll be a spill attempt in December, January this year now.
Speaking of, and maybe this is something we can throw in after we speak to John, because I know you had Craig Rennie on with you on Tuesday night. Craig has just released the latest podcast on the Big Hairy Network. And the title of the podcast is Why is the New Zealand Economy So Bad? Last week, the podcast he did was based around the GDP numbers, and it got 20,000 views, which is a good number for these. And this one's already going gangbusters. It's at about 2,500 on YouTube. It's only been up for a couple of hours, and about 2,500 on Facebook already. So Craig is really hitting his straps at the moment, trying to help us understand more in layman's terms about what's happening with the economy. So maybe during the show, Marty will come back to that, and we'll have a look at the GDP numbers. Because one of the things we want to do with the co-hosts is there's been several things going on of recent times, is just give you kind of an open opportunity to chat about whatever you like as well. So let's do that later on. All right. But how about for now, we bring on the legendary Mr. John Minto to talk about Gaza. John Minto. John, welcome to the show. So pleased and delighted to have you with us.
Oh, kia ora, Pat and Martyn. It's really nice to be here. I enjoyed my first stint on a wee while ago, and looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, cool. Now, we were going to have a look sort of what's going on at the moment, because everyone, I've been calling this Gaza idol, because it's a little bit like tune in after the break. We'll see if New Zealand recognises Gaza. That's kind of how it's felt the whole way through. Prime Minister's like, well, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's all happening this week. It hasn't happened yet. Winston Peters hasn't had a stand-up yet. I'm assuming it's happening tomorrow or the next morning, New Zealand time. But John, can I just throw you the ball, hopefully not a hospital pass, and just like to get your thoughts around this idea of recognising Gaza, where we're at, maybe any insights you have or any ideas as to where you think it might be going.
Yeah, well, I think New Zealand should have recognised Gaza, 77 years, recognised the Palestinian state 77 years ago. I think the way it's been brought up now by Western countries is as a distraction, because they do not want to sanction Israel. They're terrified of sanctioning Israel, because that path leads to the end of the Israeli state. So what they want to do is, I think, what Winston Peters has been doing is dangling this: will we recognise, will we not, as a way to, as I say, distract the whole discussion. It's like when we had the march across the, it was supposed to be the Harbour Bridge March, but it turned into that huge march down Queen Street. I mean, I was almost the last person to leave Aotea Square, so I was at the very end of the march. It took us an hour to leave the square, and by the time I left the square, the march had already reached Victoria Park. So it was an enormous march. And the theme of that march wasn't recognise Palestine. The theme of that march was sanction Israel for genocide. Okay. So everybody in the movement is saying, recognising Palestine is not going to make a blind bit of difference in the short term. Yes, it will be important in the long term, but in the short term, no, not a blind bit of difference. To stop Israel now, we need sanctions. Israel needs to feel some real heat, and at the moment, they're not feeling any heat. They're just feeling the love, to the point where, the deputy foreign minister in Israel, who is coming down to the Pacific in October. She was interviewed by Sean Plunkett on his platform show, and she said she wants to come to New Zealand to thank the New Zealand government, to express gratitude to the New Zealand government for the fact that it has stood by Israel for the last 2 years. And that is the most shocking indictment of where New Zealand has been. You know, she's not talking about going to Australia or anywhere else. She says, I want to come to New Zealand to express gratitude to our government. So I think we're in an absolute powerless position. We put a media release out a couple of days ago saying, you know, New Zealand is the unprincipled runt among Western nations. We're at the very back. We're doing nothing. We're trying to keep out of everybody's way. But there's a genocide going on, and the people of New Zealand are really angry about it. The last thing I'll say in this little segment is to say that the people of New Zealand have expressed through at least 3 public opinion polls over the last year, and the latest one by Radio New Zealand. If you're given, if people are given the choice, should we sanction Israel or not? People are 2-1 in favor of sanctioning Israel. There's a whole lot of don't knows, that's true, but people who give an opinion, it's 2-1 in favor of sanctioning Israel. And most issues I've been involved in, you start off as a real minority, and you're really you're battling to make headway. In this issue, in a sense, we've won public support, and the public are behind Palestine, but the government isn't. And it's the same as other Western governments as well. Yeah.
Do you see where the runt? I mean, when I think about Christopher Luxon and his team, I think of a word that rhymes with runt, but it's not exactly runt. I can't quite remember what it is right now. Do you think their non-committal is them standing by Israel, i.e. this person's going to come down and heap praise on their heads for supporting Israel? Is that person being a troublemaker because a non-commitment is not support? Or do you think what they've done inadvertently has supported the Israeli position?
Well, what they've done is definitely supported the Israeli position. The Israelis know that they can't win the argument, so they don't try and win the argument. They don't try and win public support. All they do is, when people put their heads up, they target politicians, they target news editors, and they target academics. Those are the 3 groups they go for. They don't particularly go for us, but they go for those groups. They know they cannot win the argument. So we're in a situation where that big group of don't knows is a group that is that's there because for decades Israel has thrown red herrings in every direction, and their basic line is, it's complicated. Don't say anything unless you've read the history, until you know. In other words, they're just trying to scare people off the whole argument, and that's been successful to a significant extent. But I think now their war crimes are so egregious, they are so, so depraved and so cruel in what's happened in Gaza, that I think the public in general are just freaking gobsmacked by it. And the fact that we're doing nothing about it is just shocking, absolutely shocking.
Bomber.
David Seymour has built an illegal settlement on the Prime Minister's balls, and we have to pretend that's an independent foreign policy. What's going on here, and the reason why we are foot dragging, is ACT, who are very, very supportive of Zionist apologists, have been forcing this government to drag its heels. And that's why we haven't had a clear, definitive argument against an statement of support. John's absolutely right in terms of what we're really getting here with recognizing Palestine as a symbolic victory. It's more to shame Israel than anything else. We need to go well beyond that. The war has crippled the Israeli economy. They've gone from 6.4% growth to 0.9%. It's really hurt. The cultural isolation is hurting. The only way you're going to force them to the negotiating table and do something meaningful is sanctions. It's as simple as that. They will not change unless they are forced to. And unfortunately, Netanyahu, he needs constant warfare so that the systems of his own country, the independent judiciary, the checks and balances of a normal functioning democracy, he's able to push those constantly off because of the war. And so we need to push Israel economically into a place where Netanyahu, is either caught up by the judiciary or politically is removed, because it is his vested interest to keep with the war. And that's why he's not interested in any real peace deal, because he needs to keep conflict alive. And if you've got a prime minister who's in charge with that kind of level of power, well, you're never going to be able to change anything. And I think that the other problem, of course, is that Donald Trump is absolutely enabling this genocide. He's absolutely giving a green light for Netanyahu to do as he likes. So we in the West, I mean, these are our allies. They are committing a genocide. What are you supposed to do when your allies are committing war crimes? We have to step up in a much louder and a much clearer voice than we currently.
Can I just add one thing to that, Bomber? I think it's an important factor. That is that National Party and Labor did it when Labor was in power as well. They've contracted out foreign affairs to Winston Peters. He's an old hand. He knows the area. He's a marvelous job. And that narrative has been picked up by the media generally to say he's a really good pair of hands to be holding foreign affairs. But if you think about Winston Peters, I don't think it's and I'd say this for the government generally, it's not necessarily an ideological commitment to Israel at all. I don't think they have that very strongly, apart from a small number of MPs like Simon Court and Act and various others, that they're absolutely away with the fairies when it comes to Israel. But I think Winston Peters' whole political career has been wanting New Zealand to be very closely in orbit with the US. So I think he's not looking at what Israel's reaction will be. He's wanting to know what will the US reaction be. So, Winston Peters actually has been, if you look at all those issues that we like to talk about, the anti-nuclear and the anti-apartheid and the women's movement and gay rights and all and whatever, Winston Peters has been on the wrong side of all of those over the years, and he's on the wrong side of this one. So I think we need to see his role as one wanting to cozy up to the US.
So for future reference, whatever Winston wants, the opposite is the right thing to do based on what you just about said.
Yeah. That's
pretty much.
Yeah, I'm interested also in the process a little bit. Either of you guys know, I'd love your input onto this. Is this, whether they're going to recognize or not Gaza, is this a cabinet decision? Does it have to get a vote at cabinet? Does the whole cabinet have to agree to it? Because listening to David Seymour, we played a clip of him from just a couple of days ago, talking about there's absolutely no way that we're going to give the terrorists, you're going to recognize them when there's, hostages, blah, 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 blah. But he was like a hard no. Do either of you guys know, does this need to be a we're all on board or no one's on board? Does this need to be a majority and one can agree to disagree?
It's just majority. Whoever has the majority in cabinet, and they're all bound by that. But the foot dragging really is coming from ACT, and they are the ones who have throughout all of this done everything they can to stymie any real criticism from the government on what Israel's actions have been. And it's just another reality of how feckless and spineless the Prime Minister is in not putting his foot down.
Yep. I think I agree with that, Bomber. I think just the process thing, the government say that there's going to be some sort of cabinet call tomorrow with Winston over in New York, and that he will make the announcement on Saturday morning our time. So I mean, I think they will definitely recognise Palestine, but they'll put all of these caveats in place. You know, Hamas can't be there. There has to be this, that, and the other thing. There has to be reforms here and there. So it'll be so caveated out that it'll be almost meaningless. And they may not even go that far. They may say, we will recognise Palestine when this, and this happens.
Yeah.
And that way, we keep out of sight of the US.
One question for clarity. You've said that sanctioning Israel is the big thing. That recognising Gaza will do something in the long term, not in the short term. Those countries that we've heard, Australia, France, UK, Canada, and the others that have recognised Gaza, are any of them down the path of also sanctioning Israel, or are they just at the recognising state, which you're saying is not really the best thing to do at the moment?
Well, look, the country that's really come out in front is Spain. I mean, Spain announced 9 different sanctions measures, and none of them are earth-shatteringly brilliant, but they're solid, and they give a clear direction forward. And if Western countries were to pick up those Spanish sanctions, then we would have some real heavy pressure on Israel, and honestly, this war would stop very, very quickly. So yeah, Spain is a country to watch. And just today, and this is, how these international conflicts have critical points, and I think we may be approaching a really critical point where we've got the flotilla heading towards Gaza, and we've got Spain now sending a warship to protect the flotilla, and you've got Italy sending 2 ships to protect the flotilla. And this is a point where European countries are saying, Israel, you are starving people. There's a genocide going on. We are going to support people who are taking food aid in against what your government's doing. And at the same time, you've got Egypt and Turkey are having military exercises in the sea off the east of the Mediterranean. So there could be, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm naturally an optimist by nature. This could be a moment when European countries do stand up in a meaningful way, and that's going to really put the cat among the pigeons. The US will be right now flat out desperately trying to pull this in and give Israel a free hand, but that's going to be a difficult task.
Bomber?
I think that many of the old alliances with Europe have crumbled. I think that the Abraham Accords with the Middle East have fallen over. I mean, Israel is a case of David becoming Goliath. I just cast our mind back to the Vietnam War, and they refer to that as the first war that was broadcast into our lounge rooms. And the horror of seeing children blown to bits by American bombs, the horror of seeing children burnt with napalm, the reality of what war did changed an entire generation's perception. And I think that what we've got with what's been happening in Gaza, this is almost the first war that's been broadcast to our primary schools. My daughter and her friend group, when they're watching TikTok and they're seeing these horrific images of children who they identify with being blown to smithereens and blown to the damage this has caused Israel and America's standing in the world, I don't think has even been calculated yet.
Yeah.
And the long-term effects of this are going to be with us for generations. You can't kill this amount of people, have it exposed to the world, and no change occur. I think that Israel have done themselves a terrible, damaging disservice in the way they have prosecuted their revenge on October the 7th. I think America has been shameful in allowing Israel to get away with such barbarous violence and cruelty beyond imagination. there's no way. There's no way of them winning this. There's no
Yeah.
winning here. You know.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is obvious to all of us as well, Marty, by how countries are reacting now to Israel, what Canada is doing, what UK is doing, what France is doing, probably unthought of a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. But because they've gone that far, it's almost like, at some stage you kind of go, look, he's my best mate, but he's now doing things that I'm not even going to support. I'm with you. You know what I mean? It's like if they didn't turn, they would have to therefore either by omission or not be endorsing what's going off. So it's on some level it's horrible because they've done so. It's gotten so bad they've had to. And there's evidence of that with not their sanctions but their recognition of Palestine.
Yeah, I think. It's one of those. This is 77 years. This has gone on for 77 years, and it continues right to this day, right to today, Thursday. It continues because Israel has never ever been held to account by Western countries.
Right.
That's the simple facts, and what we're saying now, and what the public of New Zealand are saying, which is great, and the public around the Western world. The global South have been saying it forever, or the people of the global South, and now the people of the Western world are joining them to say we've got to end this, and sanctions are the way to end it. So we've got the elites in the Western world still supporting Israel, and we've got the elites in the Arab world doing the same thing. But we've got such an outpouring of the mass of humanity now that I don't think, as Bomber sort of alluded, I don't think there's any way back for Israel on this. And when people say to me, oh, look, we're marching in the streets and nothing's happening, nothing's changing, we're not seeing the government move, I say, well, look, every time we wave a Palestinian flag, every time we take part in a march, we are making it more and more difficult, and now I think impossible for Israel to come back from this. We've got to keep this before the public for as long as it goes on, to make it utterly impossible for Israel to come back from this.
Just reminded as well of the stories that Nelson Mandela used to say about hearing about protests going on in New Zealand and how it gave him energy on Robben Island, wasn't it? So I think there's always something going on. Hey, John, thank you for your time. But before we go, where to from here? I mean, obviously there's still protests happening all around the country on Saturdays. Anything to let us and the whānau know about as to from today onwards, what we need to know about? Any ideas as to what you think we should be doing to stay in this fight?
Well, I think after Saturday morning, Winston Peters will have ended dangling whatever he's dangling, recognising a Palestinian state. And I think that we have to move on, maintain our movement forward, demanding sanctions. Yes. I think there will be a big march on the Harbour Bridge, and we need to build that into the biggest march New Zealand has ever seen. And in the middle of October, we have a court case coming up at the High Court in Auckland, where we're taking the super fund to court. I mean, it's just unbelievable that we still have investors in New Zealand who are investing in companies that the United Nations have identified as being complicit in building and maintaining illegal Israeli settlements on Palestinian land. Yes. And it's an absolute shame that our sovereign wealth funds are part of that problem. So there is a lot happening, and it's forward with sanctions. We must demand and continue to demand sanctions.
And just before he goes, I need to say this, comrade. John, we're so lucky, sir, to have you leading this movement. I know you're too humble to ever acknowledge these words, but you have been New Zealand's social conscience since the apartheid era. To have you so active, still leading this charge, we are blessed to have you as one of our leaders, comrade. And just all power to your arm, John, how you manage to get up every day and lead this movement and continue to make the positive change and remind New Zealanders what it is to actually have a moral backbone and to have a moral conscience. we're so blessed to have you, mate.
Well, thanks for that, Bomber. I think this is you've used the right word, movement. So this is not an organisation. We're not trying to build an organisation. We're trying to build a movement, and there are lots of different groups in the movement, and they're all doing a fantastic job. So we are moving forward, and the good thing is that all of the groups in the movement have got the same aims. We're calling for sanctions against Israel as the top priority. So yeah, thank you for those kind words, and thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, John. Have you back whenever you want to tell us about stuff. Thank you again for coming on. All the best.
Solidarity, comrade.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, bye.
So let's keep going. Oh, actually, Marty. Normally at the end of an interview, we kind of go reflections. Anything you want to share? Any reflections from what we just heard?
He's such a hero to me. I just think the shit that he waged through, the right throw the most despicable stuff at him, and he's still standing, and he's still reminding us what it actually is to be a conscious human being, what morality really looks like, and I'm just a fan.
And on top of all of that, appears to still have a landline, so that's kind of cool as well.
You need one for a revolution.
You do. Harder to track. Probably not so much, but harder to track. Then you can, at least want to show you where you are in the world. Let's get to a few super chats that have come in. You'll all be happy to hear, just as we've been talking, One News has uploaded their episode, so we'll be able to get that footage from the National MP. That's why I shouldn't have mentioned it. See, if I hadn't mentioned it, no one would have known. Every night, Bomber Gold gives us a countdown to the last possible day of an election. So apparently the last possible day now is 450 days at most from Gold. Yes. Thank you, sir. Speed locked NZ. You never expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Good call.
Peter Symes says, I hear the NZNO, junior doctors, allied health, teachers, principals, fire service, and maybe a few others are balloting for a coordinated strike. Ooh, general strike. That will, if Chewie comes back to New Zealand and he hears that news, that will just warm the cockles of his heart. He's been calling for it forever.
Yes.
Kai Mātara says, did you know that Christine Carbon, who helped bomb the Rainbow Warrior, helped Israel target and bomb Palestinians in Beirut just a year before? I did not know that, and we will just say, for legal purposes, this is an allegation that I've seen no backing of, but it's an interesting point if it is indeed the case. Hey, Bomb, a question for you from Maria, especially looking at the CEO, the mood of the boardroom, with the only person getting over a 4 out of 5 rating being Erica Stanford. The question from Maria is, hey, Bomber, what's the tea on Stanford? Is there any tea going around on Stanford? Have you heard anything? Anything in the trenches coming out? That's a long pause. That pause is perhaps too long. Is there anything going on? Oh.
Here's what I think. I think, please replace Luxon with Erica Stanford, please. Do it.
Okay.
Go on.
I'm hearing a certain tone which says to me, you think that'll be a good thing for the left? Because
I think that we're going to beat Chris Luxon next year. That I am very certain of. I think the economy is going to get far worse, and he is going to get sheeted with the blame of that. And if we beat him, that will be great. But if Erica was the leader of the National Party, I think the possibility would be that we could damage the political right in a way they won't be able to gain power for 2 terms.
Really? You don't think she'd be? I mean, Luxon is a cuckson. You don't think it'd be harder to beat her than him? You don't think she'd be more attractive vote for those sitting in the centre right? Oh my gosh.
Let me be as clear as I can be.
Okay.
I believe that she may have a skeleton or two in her closet that would devastate the National Party.
Sounds like you and I are having a wee chat after the show, Bomber.
All I'm saying is please replace it. Please, no,
Okay.
no, do it,
Okay.
do it.
Okay.
Do
Okay.
it.
Okay. Kiwi Bird says we need to sanction David Seymour. Tiffany says, late fee and shout out to Bomber. You helped shape my political views during the Bush oil war years. Still dreaming of the revolution, comrade.
Here with you, comrade. Here with you.
You get a lot of people still kind of saying, Channel Z was such a formative time for me. You get that fair bit?
Often I'll go out and somebody will roll up and just want to shake my hand and thank me for that being a really formative part of their life and creating the kind of psyche to ask questions and to want to be a better citizen. It was a privilege. It was just an absolute privilege to be able to lead that at the time. And I think it was just a unique combination of events that flukishly and freakishly occurred that allowed us, just a bunch of kids, to run a nationwide radio that was so subversive. And we got away with it. I don't know if you'd be able to get away with that in today's radio culture, but we were very lucky.
There was an opportunity to do something along it with Today FM, and they chose, unfortunately, to go down the path of let's do conservative light, where they could have got, let's be honest, they could have got you, they could have got me, they could have got a bunch of lefty lunatics on there and actually gone, this hasn't been tried. It may still fail, but at least let's give it a go. You know. But look where we are now, speaking to 8 people on a podcast that we spend all day making.
But we're doing it honestly. No one's telling us what to say.
True, actually. Now, speaking of podcasts, I said I'd do this. This is Craig's podcast. It's already up. It's already out. It's already getting hundreds of views. I'm just going to play you the introduction because the introduction actually sort of answers the question, why are we in such a bad place? And I think he said it on your show as well, Bomber. Have a listen to what Craig's got to say when he says, why is the New Zealand economy so bad?
Why have investors lost confidence? Why have businesses lost confidence? Why have consumers lost confidence? And the answer is quite simple. The government spent the first year of office essentially putting the fear of God into New Zealand consumers about how bad things were. They very publicly cancelled projects and programs. They very publicly called for restraint, spending restraint, and they cut their budgets. And this is exactly as Akerlof and Schiller predicted. You tell people bad things, and consumers respond. They took that story and they made it their own. They believed it. They stopped spending.
So there you go. So why is New Zealand in such a bad way? Craig is saying it's because this current government told us it was so bad and we believed them. That is the position of Craig. He's got it's about 17 minutes, his podcast this week. Yep, there you go, 17 minutes. Go check it out, get the whole thing. But just speaking about the GDP and stuff, this is bouncing off the back of that. Also, for the whānau, a new Gary Payinda podcast tomorrow morning as well with the front line. But yeah, so Craig's like, well, we're doing badly because we believed this government that it was so bad, which does raise the question, if this government had have been a lot more, or any government, a lot more positive, would we not be doing so badly? Maybe.
Well, I mean, look, I think the psychology, he's right. There was a whole bunch of psychology that went along with that. But deeper than the psychology, the 2024 cuts to the infrastructure pipeline that Labor had put together. Remember, Labor had put that infrastructure pipeline of building public houses, building hospitals, building schools, building more roads. That had come off the back of Labor listening to the industry. And the industry was saying, look, if you can't get us a confirmed work pipeline, we can't keep our workers here. They'll go overseas. The first thing they did in 2024 was destroy all that infrastructure pipeline.
Yeah.
And because they believed, because Nicola Willis believes this is a matter of faith, that if the state steps back, the market steps in and does the job cheaper. The problem with that mentality is that New Zealand is 3 enormous, sparsely populated islands. We have always relied and required the government to come in as a 40% foundation stone. the dynamics of the free market don't give you those levels of competition when you have such incredibly low population density. But they thought that, didn't want to look into that, went straight into the cuts, and the ramifications and knock-on effect of that was 70,000 New Zealanders leaving the country, an absolute collapse in the construction industry. And what's their solution now? Oh, we're just going to bring in more migrant workers and exploit them. Well, what's the point of announcing we're going to build all of these new classrooms if we don't have any bloody workers to actually make them?
Yeah.
And bringing more migrant workers in is only going to cause more friction with those who are left here, domestic workers, because they're now competing with someone down the road who's going to be able to do the job cheaper than they can. So this short-sightedness on behalf of the government has led to this direct harvest that we're all now facing. And that's why the CEOs have turned on them. I mean, those numbers are extraordinary when you consider that Luxon himself was one of them. This is their peer group, right? And they've turned on National. So I think that what we're going to see over the next 6 months is a more deterioration of that of the economy that we've got. The only thing they're hoping on is these 215 gold visas to come in and reinflate a speculative property bubble. That's it. That's their vision.
Yeah. Very interesting. We'll see what happens. There's one more super chat that's coming. In fact, there's two more super chats that have come in. Kiwi Bird just asks, how much do you want to spill the tea on Erica? Yeah, fair enough. We'll leave that one right there. And Rajan says, if Erica has skeletons in her closet, then maybe that explains where Luxon's spine went. That's very good. That's a very funny joke. Well done. Well done on your joke there. That was a well-rounded, well-formed, very funny piece of writing. Well done. So, old mate has 25 properties. Old mate didn't declare his properties. Put them into a trust, I believe, just before being elected, which means, was he doing it to skirt around the rules or was he following the rules? Old mate has an investigation on the way.
A Parliament watchdog is investigating whether National MP Carl Bates should have declared that he was a benefactor of 25 properties. The Whanganui MP put the properties into a family trust shortly before facing financial declaration rules. An inquiry is now being conducted.
So important timeline, shortly before having to face them. So he knew about them and made a decision to, and I'll say allegedly, get around them. Knew about them, date was coming up, put them in a trust before he had to do it. Timeline.
By the registrar to see if Bates breached the rules by not disclosing the homes. Some Auckland residents are concerned there's been a lack of...
Super quick. That was the video we were waiting for. So there you go. It seems that the timeline goes, get your order, your house in order by this date. And then weeks before that, he made some changes so he didn't have to disclose those houses. Bomber?
Let's continue the timeline. Then once elected into this government, he voted for loopholes for landlords, right? We don't know whether or not he benefited from those loopholes, do we? This is a government for the landlords, by the landlords, in the interests of the landlords. And it's just another deplorable way that these property pimps manage to run the country for them and their interests. I found it outrageous that once Luxon moved the Bright Line test, he then sold it to 2 apartments.
Yeah.
And apparently made, $70,000 that he wouldn't have. I also find it extraordinary that they've removed this top limit of foreigners buying mansions in New Zealand that are worth over $5 million. Well, Luxon has 2 properties. Both of them are worth $7 million. Tell me he's not going to sell one of those houses to an overseas millionaire and directly.
And there's so much wrong with that. I mean, like I put a piece out quite soon after that. You're not going to see, not that this is necessarily going to bother you or me, Bomber, but those houses that were going to be 4.3 million are now 5.01 million. And then the people who are going to pay 4.3 million are now priced out of the market. So they're going to buy the $3 million houses. The ones that could afford the 3 million are going to buy the two. The ones that are going to buy the two are going to buy the ones. The ones that are going to buy the ones are now buying the $800,000 houses, and the new home buyers are going to be pushed out of the market. And people will say, oh, it's only the higher prices, but there is an absolute step down as it goes through. 100%.
That's right.
100%. And it does seem, I mean, you just said, I don't know if you're being tongue-in-cheek. We don't know if the landlord changes impacted him. He's got 25 properties.
We don't know.
But don't we have to assume they did? If you've got 25 properties, they're not going to be all with no debt on them, surely.
Well, then that makes him not declaring them even worse, right? Because he has benefited directly. We don't know, but the possibility is he's benefited directly from a law change that he himself voted on. This sort of venal corruption is what we expect in other countries. It's not the way New Zealand is.
So I would say this, and I think I'm safe in saying this legally, I would be really surprised if anyone in New Zealand owned 25 properties and they weren't benefiting from the changes to the landlord. That would surprise me, because that would imply none of those properties are being rented out.
That's right.
So I would be very surprised. The other thing that always comes up with this conversation is we are so very keen and careful to be transparent about conflicts of interest. How can you pass a law, any law, forget what it is, and then be a massive beneficiary of the law you've just changed, more so than the general population? It just seems it's the most disgusting thing.
Right? And it's things like this that erode our confidence and our trust in the system. You know? We're electing people to represent us, not represent their interests, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Tiffany just says neoliberalism was a mistake. Fuck the system. Andrew says, well said, Bomber. We are an island trading nation. We must tax that trade wealth and spend it to grow a real economy, or a plantation economy results.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get to the next story, shall we? Which I forget what it was. Do we know?
Fonterra.
It was Fonterra, that's right. Thanks, Fonterra. TV3 did a much better job than TVNZ did on Fonterra tonight, because, as I said, it feels like TVNZ, and we talked about this last night, and part of it, I think, Bomber, it would appear that part of the problem is because the news media has been gutted, we're losing, reporters and journalists hand over fist, that now you don't have enough time to look into everything in any great detail. However, I'm not going to quite accept that, because that's your job. You need to do that. But it does feel like quite often, it's just not about national either, about any political party, that a journalist will reprint, a fact sheet sent by party X, and that's the story. It did feel a bit that way by TVNZ tonight. TV3, I think, did a better job, and they kind of went a bit. They got into it, because they got the position from the Greens, because it's like, we feed the world, says Nicola Willis. The Greens are kind of saying, but at any cost? Is that what we really want to do? Let's have a look at 3 News tonight.
No mai haere mai. Welcome to 3 News. Fonterra has delivered one of its strongest financial results for shareholders, with a whopping $16 billion in cash returns driven by demand from overseas. That explains the high price of dairy products at the supermarket, such as butter and milk. The Greens say that's unfair and believe it's time for New Zealand to diversify away from dairy. Political correspondent Zane Small reports.
$10 for a 500-gram block of butter. The new normal for supermarket shoppers paying the price for strong demand for dairy overseas.
Our prices are tied to the global markets. Like for butter, for example, we export maybe 90% of the butter we make. So it is natural that the local prices match what's going on in the export markets.
Fonterra today announced a total of $16.2 billion in cash returns to shareholders, up 30.6% on the previous year. Chief Executive Miles Hurrell said the dairy cooperative continues to see good demand from global customers for high-quality products made from New Zealand farmers' milk, and this is driving returns.
I wouldn't call it a surprising result. They've been signaling for quite some time that things are going well. But yeah, it's an excellent result, even slightly exceeding what the market was anticipating.
You can see why in the stats. In the 12 months to July, exports of milk powder, butter and cheese increased 17%. And during that same 12-month period, the price of milk increased 16%, while butter prices shot up 42.2%.
This is a kind of a side note to the story, but you're never going to convince me that there couldn't be some kind of legislation to have the country from which your product is made be not necessarily driven by export prices. I pay for the roads that your Fonterra trucks drive down. I'm in part an investor in the finances that allows you to do that. The person in Perth or London or New York, they're not. And if it wasn't for our public, our public health system probably has helped the farmers out. Our public education system has helped the farmers out. I'm sure there's been time where either individual farmers or Fonterra have had to claw back some of that tax money because they haven't had a very good year. And that tax money is in part in a pool of money thanks to other New Zealanders. So I will not accept that we have to pay the prices based on export prices, because when you export to another country, that other country has zero investment in you. The amount of money we as New Zealanders pay into the system that then and I'm not saying this in a bad way, I'm not throwing it in your faces, but that the farmers and the companies benefit from, we should see a return for that more than this is what it does for our GDP. You know what I mean, Bomber?
Preach.
Yeah. Frustrates me. All right, we'll keep going on the story.
We should celebrate this success for what it is. It's the hard work of many people over generations.
Sorry, did you throw up in the back of your mouth a little bit there? Was that?
I just think Fonterra is the worst fucking example of capitalism that we have in this country. Let's not forget, just to remind the snarly little shark there. Let's just remind ourselves, we made Fonterra a monopoly, right? Like we all agreed to be able to maximize sales overseas. We'll make the monopoly. So we wiped out domestic competition, right, to create the monopoly. We all agreed to do that. So that they could get the best price on the international market. The problem, the flip side to that, there are only 5 million New Zealanders. We are competing against a Chinese middle class of 500 million. How the living Christ are we ever going to be able to compete, right? Now, the whole argument that we have told ourselves over decades is diversification. So we created all of these brands, right? Which they're now selling off. And you know why they're selling off the brands? Because they're not making the money from the brands. We sell basic bitch milk powder, just like we sell basic bloody logs without doing any added stuff. Just like we're now shipping animals overseas to be killed without no extra value created, we're going for the most basic version of us, because 90% of the milk, of the 90% of the dairy is milk powder that is used in the heavily industrialized food industry, right? It's a base ingredient for shitty chocolate. It's a base ingredient for shitty mass-manufactured food. The millisecond, and I mean the goddamn millisecond, the fast food industry is able to come up with a synthetic calcium casing, right? Which is what vast amounts of research is going into overseas right now.
Yeah.
They won't need our milk powder. If you're able to create a synthetic milk casing, right, for 10% of the price of actual, real, organic cow made, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they go, our heavily saturated shit food full of sugar and fat and unhealthy crap, organic milk is where we are going to draw the line? They will not give a shit about our organic milk. They will immediately replace our milk with the synthetic cheaper product, and we will be bankrupt. This country will be bankrupt. The dairy industry is a sunset industry. The moment they can create synthetic we're gone. And what will happen? Here's what will happen. There will be breaking news. Someone's been able to do the synthetic milk casing, right? And they're going to market with immediately. And you watch. The share market will tear its asshole out and we will collapse overnight. Because all we're doing is selling a base ingredient now. The moment you can create that base ingredient cheaper, we're gone. So we are paying a price for these cows that fart and shit into our water. So we're paying for an emissions cost. We're paying for water that's stolen. We're then paying for water that's dirtied. And we can't get this product that's made in our own country at a price that the international market. I just think Fonterra is the worst bloody company. Yeah. And when that synthetic casing does come, 2 years, 3 years from now, we are right royally rooted. She doesn't seem to notice that.
Yeah, I did notice though. It's just a little side note, but the last time she was doing she seems to be the only MP that does sit-down stand-ups. But she was doing a sit-down stand-up at her desk. The Fonterra truck from behind her had gone off her shelf. Don't know if that's saying anything, but I noticed it had gone, and that's a real thing. Let's go back to old Nikki No Boats, shall we?
And actually it's keeping a light on in parts of the economy where we really want to see it.
It's a tricky issue for the beehive because on the one hand, strong demand for dairy means higher returns for farmers, which is good for economic growth. But it also means that consumers pay a higher price at the supermarket, which isn't so great for a government that promised to address the rising cost of living.
It's not fair. I think Fonterra need to make sure that they are looking after New Zealanders first and foremost. People can't afford to put food on the table. It's not fair that Fonterra just reaps a profit.
Steve Abel of the Green Party believes it's time for New Zealand to diversify away from dairy.
Diversity is strength. We need to see more diversity, particularly here in Canterbury, where the impact of the dairy industry is worsening nitrate water contamination, where people can't even drink the water from their kitchen tap.
Yes.
The farmer will be so confused because Steve looks like one of them. He's got the beard. He's wearing the swan dry. He looks like one of them, but these words coming out of his mouth that just don't seem to resonate. But he's looks the part, so that'll be very confusing to some farmers out there.
Steve Abel is a great man. I had the fortune many years ago in a Greenpeace action. We stormed one of the coal fire power stations up north and set up a pirate radio station on top of it. He's a great guy, and he's someone who really understands the economics behind this industry.
All right. Let's go back to Ms. Willis.
To diversification, but let's do that with a really strong backbone. And agriculture does provide that for New Zealand. We should be proud of it. We feed the world.
Such stupid words. It's like fucking Americans talking about patriotic. Got to be patriotic. We should be proud. Why should we be proud of it? So something that we do well, we should be proud of it. You know, it's like I've never really understood that. I've never understood.
What you talking about, Willis?
Yeah,
we feed 40 million people, not with our cheese and our butter. We feed those people industrialized candy because our milk powder is just an ingredient filler, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. All right.
Sustainably and efficiently than any other country.
If we didn't have dairy contributing to those to that export story, our exchange rate would be a lot lower. It'd be a lot more expensive to import other goods, and we would be worse off overall.
But that doesn't make it any easier for households paying 40% more for a block of butter compared to a year ago.
Now, I don't think we necessarily have to go and compare ourselves to international countries that we're not similar to, but I do sometimes think about places in the Middle East who produce oil who then pay next to nothing for their petrol because it's much cheaper for them to produce. So there is a case to be had for the home market not being of international prices. It's my biggest frustration. And Bomber, what you're saying, if we don't diversify, it's interesting hearing Nicola saying, yes, we do need to diversify, but she's basically saying, but as long as we do it through agriculture, including the dairy sector. Well, that's not really diversification then.
When John Key was in power, he put all our cows in one Beijing paddock. And the problem with the intensification that was required to lift those milk production rates was that it locked a lot of farmers into debt with their bank. So they didn't have a choice, right? So we've got more cows, more methane release from those cows, more water being used and dirty because of those cows, And then you and I have to pay the same price that the international market, who are many millions of times larger than we are, we're getting screwed over here, and it's the worst kind of capitalism.
Worming says Fonterra making dollars from milk made on stolen land.
Very good point. Very good point.
Howie says Fonterra is so fucking arrogant, saying F you to the communities that hold them, not
Right.
kind neighbour, not partners, not contributors. Yeah, that's like I was saying before. We all contribute towards the success of Fonterra.
Right?
The farmers get the dividend, the CEO
Yes.
gets the pay, we get to pay the same prices they're paying for butter in London. It doesn't seem like a good deal to me.
And we lose water, and we have global emissions, right?
Yep. Kiwi Bird, I hope butter days are coming our way. I see what you did there. Very good.
That's
Well
worth
done.
$2. That's worth $2.
Here's an example of how we support the dairy industry. Peter says, give us back what we spent on it's bovine bovis, isn't it? You know,
That's good. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
you know, if you're gonna capitalize the profits and socialize the losses, I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, that should be on you. That should be on your cost.
And remember, we agreed to the monopoly so that there isn't any domestic competition. We removed our bloody competition.
Yeah. Hey, Marty, that's all our stories for tonight. It's unbelievable. It's a well-timed show. We're normally supposed to
That
say
hour
1 hour.
just flew by, didn't it?
I have a question for you, based on some.
Stansford?
No, it's not. It's based on an article you wrote titled "Mass Immigration is Killing New Zealand: 5 Ideas on How to Fix It." That caused a bit of controversy. Are you open to a quick conversation about it?
Oh, yeah, no. Let's have it.
Okay, because it's come in as a question as well. Arvid says, Bomber, please elaborate on your anti-migration blog from a fortnight ago. A lot of your language sounded very right-wing. Can't not, sorry. Please also respect Takuta, use his Māori name, Kia ora. I think I saw you guys calling him Doc. I think Doc's his nickname. I don't. It's like us calling. It's like Chippy. We did no one's ever said make sure you say Chris Hipkins. We say Chippy. It's like he's got a well-known nickname. And during that last story, I had to go back. You write a lot on your daily blog. It really is a daily blog. I had to go a lot. I think I had to go 6 pages in to find it. 6 pages in? Yeah, it's a long way back. For people who weren't a part of it, mass immigration is killing New Zealand. 5 ideas on how to fix it. I'll just quickly do the ideas and how they've been written so people know. The 5 ideas: halt all immigration coming in for 5 years so the infrastructure can catch up while offering amnesty to current overstayers. We have to incentivize Kiwis into lifting their fertility rates and heavily subsidize childcare and maternity leave. We need us having more kids to keep up with the population requirements. There was a really interesting article I saw today. We were going to talk about it. Treasury's put out a report that basically says PAYE needs to go up, or GST needs to become 32% to cover our aging population. Population requirements, so we don't need to keep importing so many people. Lift our refugee numbers and wrap around services. We have an obligation as a liberal, progressive democracy to provide haven for those being damaged on a warring planet. Warring planet. Yep. Ensure every single migrant worker comes into New Zealand are automatically enrolled in a migrant union to ensure they are being paid the same as domestic workers so bosses can't use. Finally, number 5, bonded education, pay the fees and provide a living allowance plus cheap accommodation to all domestic Kiwis training to be teachers, doctors, nurses and all other public service roles and jobs. They get the education for free in return for 5 years bonded service in New Zealand. Right, now I saw a little bit of hubbub online that people didn't really like the tone of this sort of thing and others. So I'm sure you would have heard it as well. Tell us what you're saying, what you were saying. Is there anything you'd change in it today? Or was it just the wording that annoyed people? The themes one? Ball is yours.
Look, I mean, I think ideas sometimes spook people. Look, we have based our economy on stealing Māori land and never paying it back, and a low-wage economy and exploitant migrant labour. The exploitation of our migrant brothers and sisters in this country should be a goddamn disgrace. I've done some work in doing research stories for cases that go to employment courts, and the level of migrant total exploitation and abuse of migrant workers is a goddamn disgrace. And if we've had Labour and National use mass immigration to bring in huge numbers of people into this country without ever paying for the infrastructure costs. The reason Auckland is so fucked and gridlocked is because most people choose to live in Auckland, but there's no one paying for the extra infrastructure that level of growth requires. If we want to be serious about protecting our migrant brothers and sisters coming into New Zealand, and I'm all... The way we have to do that is we have to make sure that they're all enrolled in a union so that their work conditions are the same as someone down the road. You get the cultural backlash that you see with Tommy Robinson and those fuckwits in the UK because you've had mass migration going on and it's undermining domestic working classes who can't compete cheaper than those people coming into the country. So you actually have to stop the bosses exploiting migrant labour, and you've got to have a hold and a pause on it to allow the infrastructure to build, but at the same time, allow all those people who are in New Zealand amnesty so that they can become immediate New Zealanders and can build up towards the infrastructure so that you can have that larger number coming in. I think we have to lift our refugee numbers. I think that we are one of the few peaceful havens in the world. Many human beings around our planet are suffering terrible bloody pain and suffering in their home countries. And the pathetic number of refugees we bring into the country at the moment, it should be a national embarrassment. We should be tripling that number. And we also have to be really serious about a conversation. What happens to our Pacific brothers and sisters when rising waves start smothering their islands? What are we going to do for those population bases then? I think we're going to have to allow all of those people to come into New Zealand. I think that we need to have a serious discussion about mass immigration so that the right wing can't use it to fuck us over. And if that means we're going to have some difficult conversations, let's have those difficult conversations, but have them proudly with us viewing them living here as something that's positive, not a negative, but let's do it in a way that they're not being exploited.
Do you think, and I'm looking at the 5 things again, do you think that if you were to write it again, is there anything that, what I saw people reacting to was the lifting fertility rates, and it's like, oh, so Bomber's telling us we need to be barefoot and pregnant, which is obviously not what you're saying.
Okay,
but
let me talk about that directly.
Okay.
You know, and I know, that one of the big, if we are serious about our sisters having the same agency as everyone is promised in a liberal progressive democracy, then pay equity is actually really bloody vital. But the biological reality is that they are the ones who have kids. So if they're going to have those kids, let's make sure we have 12 months maternity leave, right? Paid at a reasonable rate, not some pathetic amount that they get right now. Who do you want looking after that baby for the first 12 months other than their caregiver, whether it's the mum, whether it's the dad? But we need to lift our maternity rates, and we also need to make early childhood education free. We need to nationalise that. It is outrageous that so many working mums and dads have to pay almost 20% of their weekly income to just have someone look after the kids. When I'm talking about, subsidising the cost of childcare, I'm talking about maternity leave, and I'm talking about cost-free ECE, right? That's what I'm talking about. It's outrageous to me that we place so much cost of a child on the parents, don't subsidise that cost, and then can't sort of wonder why it is our fertility rates are so low. I think it's a disgrace that ECE isn't nationalised. I think that we need to do that urgently so we can put that money back into the pockets of the working mums and dads.
A couple of points. There's a couple of questions that have come in. I didn't realise this is where the name Doc came from, but Takuta means doctor, literally means doctor. So that's obviously why people call him Doc. I knew his nickname was Doc, but Takuta Means doctor. Tiffany's got a question for you. Question for Bomb. What are your thoughts on moderates like, this is like an Ask Bomber anything, ABA. It's not really, but question for Bomb. What are your thoughts on moderates like Labour, given they won't make paradigm shifting changes, but rather return to status quo?
I think Labour are so frightened about having an ideological discussion on the free market because effectively they were the party that launched it, right? The damage that was caused internally by Roger Douglas and how it ripped the bloody party to pieces. They've always been frightened to talk about it. And so I think that they keep to a very sort of straight middle road. Look, that's fine. They can be straight, they can be middle. That's who they are, that's what they is. Where we're going to get the real progressive change in the next government is from the Māori Party and from the Greens. They are the ones who at the negotiating table have got to push Chewie into far more progressive ideas, you know? So, you know, Labour is what it is, and they'll, you know, let's hope they can get 35, 36% on election night. But where we're going to get the real change, the stuff that you and I and many of the people who are watching are really focused on in terms of social policy and most important economic policy, it's the Party Māori and the Greens.
Yeah, and it's you know, if you want a model for how to do that, look at this election, look at this coalition of chaos. Look what ACT and New Zealand First have been managed to able to, and Seymour actively says it in interviews. He goes, "We've dragged the government right." And I can imagine Chloe saying that we've dragged Labour left. It's actually when you look at it from the other side, you kind of go, I see that would be a good thing. So yeah.
And I think that the real blueprint to what we want to see is Michael Savage, right? Savage was actually a far more conservative than the rest of his cabinet, and it was his cabinet who dragged him to the left on all of those big major policy decisions. So yes, happy to have Chewie in there as a moderate, but it's going to be his cabinet that pulls us to the left and puts in place those really big policy step changes that we all desperately need.
Chewie going to be there at the next election?
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if he didn't. I know him, and he's a good bugger. He's a good man. He is a good man, and I think when the moment comes, I think that he will step up to the challenge.
Okay, here's a random left field question from me. You just mentioned Michael Joseph Savage, right? And we all think about him as one of the bastions of leadership.
Right.
And I just thought, as you said that, I went, who would be New Zealand's Mount Rushmore? Who would be the prime ministers that are on our Rushmore? Let's say Savage is there. Who else would be there, in your opinion? This is a really interesting talkback topic, actually. Who would be on, like, from the left, from the right? Who would be on?
I'd say
Auntie Helen.
I'd say Jacinda Ardern. I wept when I saw her on the Daily Show. I really did. I watched that, and I wept openly. She was such a remarkable human being. We were so lucky to have her in the crises that we did. In terms of the left icons, it would be that. But I mean, if you're also talking about politicians who really shaped New Zealand, you'd have to probably put Muldoon in there. Kirk, yeah, I think Fraser. Yep, I think Fraser and Kirk would have to go at that view as well.
There's quite a few when you start thinking about it. Sid and Fraser, Holyoake, you know.
Yes.
It's actually a very interesting topic. Maybe we should do it. Maybe we should do a bit of a thing on this.
Maybe you should do some AI and get some created.
Yeah. We don't do AI here. It's naughty. We like to use real artists if we can. We do sometimes, but hey, dude, it's been fun. Oh, there's actually, I think, one other message here from Rajan. Just saw RNZ reported, I saw this as well. The Electoral Commission has said, this is like the world's most obvious headline that we all said was going to happen. Electoral Commission has said the new voter registration deadlines won't speed up the results. Of course they won't, because you have international voters that can take up to 12 days legally to get back here. So we know this, and we know this is not what it's about. It's about disenfranchising a whole bunch of voters on the left.
Voter suppression. That's exactly, you're absolutely right. I find this absolutely deplorable. They know that there were 450,000 special votes in that 14 days leading up. that 450,000 votes, 73% go left, right?
Yep.
So by wiping them out, that is such a kick in the teeth to our side. That is not what universal suffrage is about. We should be opening it up to make it easier for people to vote, not harder, and lower the bloody voting age to 16.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess, the left gets in again. There's a job for your whānau to get that voting age down. Finally, just to make this a love fest and a big wrap up, Arvids wanted you to know, ka pai bomber, kia ora e hoa, just wanted some clearer thoughts. Some of your blunt wording made me uneasy. Bless you, comrade.
Oh,
So that's all cuddles.
Always happy to explain myself further. I write in shorthand. I've got so many billions of ideas going through my head at once. I love this country. I believe in us. I believe in a collectivism where we all look after each other. The way that we abuse our migrant brothers and sisters sickens me. The way we've allowed free market dynamics to decide our morality sickens me. And I think that we've got to invest in us. We've got to invest in our young mums and dads. We've got to invest in our kids. We've got to invest in our infrastructure. The things that we're going to have to the damage from climate change that's coming is going to be so enormous, brothers and sisters, that we need to have a laser-like focus on our parliamentary system, our democratic practices, and we're going to look after for one another, because these assholes who got into power with this anti-treaty, anti-Māori, anti-beneficiary, anti-worker, anti-renter, anti-disabled, anti-environment agenda is a disgrace. And all they do is rule in the interest of their donors. Fuck that. We, as New Zealanders, have to bond together and create communities and networks. And why I'm always proud and happy to come onto the BHN, because I think what you were doing, my friend, by connecting so many New Zealanders out there, using the internet in a way that's actually positive, that's what we've got to support. I
agree. Now, Bomber, before we go, what piece of merch would you like as payment for tonight? Do you want a new Can't Bomb It?
Let me buy. I will absolutely gloriously buy one of the black ones.
This is what I'm wearing, that one there. That's the Four Faces, Magenta and Emily on it as well. That's pretty cute.
That is pretty cute.
It is pretty cute. And there's the You Can't Bomb the Truth Away. As I said, that's going pretty gangbusters at the moment.
Yeah. Get me one of those shirts and get me one of those hoodies. I'll pay.
We'll figure it out. We're mates. All right, my friend. Thank you for being on. Thank you for giving up some of your time, because I've heard you've got the best and only weekly podcast in the world, or something. Is that what you say at the start of it? The most marvelous.
Best weekly argument.
Are you going to beat us in the podcast awards this year? Because if you do, I'll be pretty fucked off again. 2 times in a row.
Let's see. I'm excited about testing ourselves up against the best in the game, and you're certainly one of the best. But just getting nominated is always a privilege.
And of course, you've got to go up against Craig Rennie and Gary Panda this time as well.
I know, and they are doing incredible fucking work.
And they get to go into the new broadcasters category because it's their first podcast, even though Craig is an absolute legend. So, Hey, dude, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do. You've always got a home here anytime you want to come on. And I think it's time for the credits and for everyone to say goodbye in the text like they always want to say to both people. Here we go.
Settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats. And
tomorrow night the kids are in, Magenta and Emily. Emily's actually going to be here in this studio doing the show tomorrow night, so make sure you tune in with them. Thanks again, Bomber. It's always fun having you on, man. Loving this, loving where we've come from those days back at Channel Z and More FM, and still doing it 25 years later. It's amazing. So thank you again, friend. Loved having you on.
You too. Be well, my friend. Be right.
All right, who everyone.